Hey everyone, John here from the Deers Embroidery Legacy, and today I'm going to share some helpful tips for all of our design doodlers out there. Now if you like these types of videos, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Now if this is your first time hearing about the Design Doodler, it's an embroidery software program that is not a digitizing, lettering, or editing program. It is an easy to use program that allows you to doodle your designs into stitches. The best part is there is a demo version and some free lessons if you want to give it a try. Now the Design Doodler does work on both PC and iPad, and with the iPad it does work best with a pen, so if you have a magic pen or you can use your finger, I will make one suggestion, and that is to buy yourself a glove. This is the #1 thing that we've seen when people are working on a surface that allows you to both touch and use a pen, is sometimes they can conflict with each other because your pen and your hand are touching the surface. I also use the glove when I'm using my pen monitor, even though my pen monitor allows me to turn off and on the touch capabilities. Having the glove just makes me slide across the screen a little bit easier, and it's a lot friendlier as I'm doodling on my surface of the screen. Now the first thing you want to do is, as soon as you load in your artwork, you want to make sure that you select the artwork and see exactly what size it is on screen. So if I select the artwork and I see what the properties are, this design is actually 22 inches in height and width. And I want to make sure that I resize my artwork to the size I want to doodle at. Don't just start doodling at your original size of your artwork, because if you try to create a fill stitch in one of these objects right here, and I create a fill stitch within this object, it's probably going to end up being like 60,000 stitches in just that one object alone. And any software program will start to bog down and start to have issues when you start loading in hundreds of thousands of stitches in sizes that you don't even have hoops available for your machine at that size. So make sure that you go in and you adjust your artwork and get it to the size that you want to actually create your design at first. And that way you know that when you start to actually doodle, you're going to be doodling at the size that you want it to sew out on your machine. The next thing you want to do before you start doodling is start learning all of the brushes within your widget. There are all types of different brushes, from a run stitch to a bean stitch, which is 3 passes, to a fill stitch, appliques, a steel, which is a fixed width satin stitch, as well as some other things to play with. And every one of these will have different widths, densities, and different types of shapes to play with. Some might have a freehand with a line, but if you look at a fill, you're going to have just a freehand and no line tool within that object. So when you are creating a freehand object, you want to make sure that you watch how you cross over itself, because if you're actually creating something and it isn't actually going to create a single object and go in and out, this will be perfect like that. But if I start to create an object that is crossing over itself in multiple areas, it won't really know what to do with itself, and you will get lost in how you're creating your lines. Same thing with a steel. If I have my path, I can draw any shape that I want with a steel, and it's going to allow me to create it. And when I switch to a line, then it's going to go on and continue to give me straight lines. So get familiar with all of your tools and how they work. It'll make your doodling process a lot easier. Now the next thing is to understand how the tools work within their limitations. We have an incredible branching tool available with the Design Doodler, which you are able to take a group of objects. Now they all need to be the same stitch type and the same width. And if I do select all of those together and I hit the automatic branching, then this will automatically branch all of these pieces together, and it will control all the pathing of the underlay, which is great. Now, like any branching in any software program, there are limitations because it's branching everything together. So you can't go too crazy, because then the underlay might actually pop out if you get too far ahead of yourself. But if I look at the next object, which is a bunch of objects that are not just a satin stitch or a steel, but they're also incorporating running stitches, if I try to group those together, it doesn't even allow me to group them. That's not an error. That's the software saying that there is limitations within all of those objects. But if I do have all satin objects and I have them in different widths of stitches, and I'm going to unselect the purple ones that I did, I'm going to select all of these, then you can see the branching does appear again. But if I click the branching, it's going to default all to the original size that I picked. So whichever size you picked first, when it branches them, it's going to branch them all at that width of the stitches. So as long as you understand how the branching works and the limitations within it, you'll really have no issues and you'll be able to use it effectively within your design. One really important thing about the branching tool is you want to make sure that all of your objects are actually touching. So if I'm looking at these objects here, and if I turn my 3D on, I can see that there's certain objects that are touching and others that aren't. These haven't been branched together yet because you can see the long list of actual items. Now when I do branch them, I'm going to see that it's going to branch all together, but this set of objects here still has a trim function, which shows me that even though I selected all the pieces or all the same stitch type, it branched the ones that were touching, but if there's ones that are not touching, then it will not branch those. If I turn the 3D off, I can see all of the jumps between these lines within the steel stitches, and if I select that color now, so I'm going to make sure that I select all of those and I'm going to branch those, the same thing will happen in that it shows that it's all branched as one object. And when I look at this, it did branch all of these and all of these together, but areas that were not touching, it actually left them as individual segments. One of the last things we'll look at is editing. If I grab that last object that I branched together and I go to my properties, I can adjust everything within that object, which is now all branched as one. So if I do want to change individual things, then I would need to select the object and I could unbranch it. So like in this one here, I unbranched individual objects and then I can change them independently and adjust insets, underlay, anything like that I can do. But if it's branched together, it'll do it all as one object when it's actually done. So if I want to add underlay to this, I can add underlay to the entire thing, and it will actually make it very easy to edit those branch objects, or I just have to unbranch them and I can do them individually. Now keep in mind, when you have any object, you can go in and you can edit the object and it will show you how to change the start and stop positions. You can add nodes, take out nodes, do whatever you want to that object and adjust it. But you have to keep in mind that if you do take that object and you do lock it into place, so it's a locked object, then you will not be able to go in and edit. We've had a few people who have locked down objects so they won't move, and then they go in and try to change something, change an inclination point, and they can no longer do anything because they have locked that object down and in place. So hopefully this gives you a few helpful hints to get you doodling successfully. We love to see your creation, and be sure to watch the next video.